We're going to start this video off with a history lesson. In our own world, Greek mythology faded away gradually as Christianity replaced it, and then very rapidly when the Romans changed the official religion of the empire. Among the second to last holdouts of the old gods were the Mani Peninsula, and the last holdouts continue on to this very day as people with statue PFPs on Twitter. The reasons for this are varied and will not be discussed here, because in Titan Quest II, the Greek gods are alive and alive. Unfortunately, they're not doing very well, because it seems the population of this world is about 1 part normal person to 99 parts bloodthirsty monster. And it's our job to fix that glaring issue. In the alpha for the sequel to a game I hold very near and dear to my heart because I was a child who read the Percy Jackson books, we will be doing our part to clear out the monstrous hordes. Will moral choices be made and hard decisions weighed against each other? I don't know, and if they are to be made, I don't think I care. All I care about is seeing the numbers on my weapons get higher, the amount of garbage I can carry around get bigger, and the number of confirmed kills get exponentially higher. In the world of games like Diablo, every enemy I run into is made out of experience, so let's go earn ourselves some as quickly as possible. Upon loading the game, there's one thing I need to do before anything else. Change my pants because I never thought Titan's Quest would get a sequel. After this, we can move on to making our character. While there are no classes or anything like that to pick at this moment, we do need to find a fitting face. This man. This is the face of a man who's been salivating at the chance to murder mythological creatures. With a name fitting for such a heroic character worthy of a Greek myth all to himself, we move on to the intro cutscene. Whereas Titan Quest I began with a couple of Greek soldiers barely being able to defeat Medusa, this game instead begins with either a Greek goddess or a biblical angel destroying a bunch of mortals so hard that fate itself is burned. After witnessing the beginning of the fourth impact, we jump 22 years down the line to Prostagma, standing on a cliffside and staring at some ruins that presumably hold something that wants us dead. After smashing some pots and being rewarded for it with armor I already have, we begin our journey proper by teaching some wild animals why man is at the top of the food chain. The essence of this kind of game quickly makes itself felt, as about 5 minutes into the save I've already acquired more weapons than I can hold, but thankfully one of them was an axe larger than me, which is my weapon of choice here. We shortly meet Aristino, who is apparently Prostagma's mentor for the last 20 years, but to me is either an inevitable death or an inevitable betrayal. Take your guess as to which it is now. She keeps telling us we have to fight a griffin. Far be it from me to call someone out for demanding callous violence, but a please and thank you goes a long way, lady. We also find this fancy glowing altar, which if my prior experience in Titan Quest I is anything to go by, will be the single most convenient thing in a Diablo-esque game like this that you could imagine. Our future dead/evil mentor in waiting informs us we have to journey to a temple at the edge of the beach, which of course I do post-haste. Post-haste here granted meaning wandering around every side passage of this beach I can find, both to loot crabs and give me experience, but that's just the nature of the beast with these games. How am I expected to save all of Greece if I haven't power leveled myself to Olympus and back first? Finding not only a mostly full set of gear, but reaching level 2 before finishing the first part of the tutorial means this paid off, and the skeletons inside the temple posed only a minor threat. With the addition of a bow, I can use one of the other fancy things this game lets you do, instantly swapping between loadouts on the fly. This can let me get some shots off with a bow before the enemy closes and I switch to my main weapons. Unfortunately, my first usage of this technique was me not knowing the hotkey to change loadouts and also forgetting it's right click and not left click to attack, but I promise you future encounters will go much smoother. Fighting our way through a few more trash mobs, we find the altar our mentor told us about. It levitates us in the air, gives us another level, and our mentor informs us that apparently it's been corrupted by evil. Sure, it's got the same color as the attacks of the Evangelion from the intro, but come on. When has grabbing hold of an artifact that grants you power ever gone wrong for anyone? I could have handled that silly little ring no problem. But the most important thing, beyond even a level, was us finally being able to pick a class, so to speak. Titan Quest and its sequel lets you choose paths called masteries, basically classes in all but name. Earlier on during my second level up, I increased our might, but also our knowledge, because you can pick more than one mastery per character. While choosing the Warfare Mastery would probably be a better option early on, given our gear, that doesn't let me throw big flaming rocks at people. With the power of the earth at our command, we press onward, slaying snakes, wolves, and finding one of the most ominous things I think you could possibly find. A man stuck in a jar we find on a dead body. As the jar man talks, he tells us that not only can we not get him out, but this was apparently a prank. Now, I understand the value of a good April Fool's joke, but at least personally, I draw the line at sticking someone next to Rainbow Dash. According to the jar, we just have to venture into a cave nearby to get him out. For a normal person, this would be certain death, with massive spiders spitting webs and poisoning us around every corner. Unfortunately for them, scorpions are stronger than spiders, and I'm gonna rock him like a hurricane. Placing the jar on a pedestal, we learn that apparently his brother put him into the jar. His brother Hermes. Having watched the Rohan OVA, I hastily leave the jar man to his own fate, because I do not wish to find out what Hermes will do to me if I ruin his prank. He at least gave me a cool hammer, that I swapped out for a bigger one about 30 seconds later, and it's at this point we get to what would be the death knell of fun in most RPGs. Inventory capacity. Were this a Bethesda game, I'd be spending the next hour miserably walking back to town over encumbered. In Titan Quest 2, that just means it's time to give the merchant a quick visit. With a touch of the L key, we open ourselves a portal to one of those altars I mentioned before, this one near a merchant I found earlier who was mourning the loss of either his dog or his brother, I couldn't really tell which. One man's vendor trash is another man's vendor treasure, and all we have to do to return to our portal in the wilds is step back into the one nearby and select our personal one. I have nothing witty to say about this, I just wish more games would add a feature like this. Venturing forward, we head back into the sunlight and wander around killing wild animals and skeletons a bit more, leveling up vitality for some more health before pressing onwards once again. I find a magic staff to replace our bow, acquire a new spell that lets me kick up the ground like an earthbender to give people concussions, and before I know it, I'm suddenly saving a nearby town from a group of people who formed a cult around a griffin. This nonsense has to come to an end, both for the good of this village and the good of my experience bar, so after another trip to dump off a load of garbage at a merchant, I head further up the mountain to take on the griffin. Preparing for what I thought was clearly the boss arena, given it glowed yellow on the minimap, I instead found a ledge I was given the opportunity to climb and jump across. For most video games, this is nothing. For me, this was nirvana, because Titan Quest 1 had walking, and more walking. Now I can sometimes see my guy do a little jump. It's the little things in life that keep me happy, and I feel no shame in that. That's what she said. Finding another totally not evil Dead Space marker, PancreasStillNoWork walks up and touches it to receive another blessing.
You have already received the blessing of the gods. How dare you ask for another?
It would appear someone disagrees with this plan of action. Thankfully, after smashing our way through some skeletons, our brave hero was told that I guess you can bless yourself. It's not like I'm impressed or anything, Baka. Now we finally take the warfare mastery for our secondary one, and we're rewarded with the kind of ground slam weapon attack usually reserved for FromSoft bosses. Although if I'm to be honest, the resistant heavy pauldrons of death were a lot more interesting to me at first given that name. What sounds more immediately impressive to you? Big Smack or the ever-chosen Slammer of Eternal Torment? Another trip to the merchant and we resume our quest, and from here on out you can safely assume every 10 minutes or so I'm teleporting back to a vendor to dump entire sacks of crap onto their lap. Scaling the mountain nets us more random garbage, several cultists worth of experience, and 2 key pieces of knowledge. There's a mechanic called Overwhelm in this game, where when you use a basic attack you gain a stack of it. Now obviously when you hit someone you get it, but you still get a stack even if you miss or aren't in a fight. Armed with this knowledge, I can swing at nothing before a fight begins to enter it even stronger. Key piece of knowledge too. Apparently you can upgrade your basic attack. So with some points dumped into that, I'm no longer hitting enemies with what was slowly but surely starting to feel like a very long metallic pool noodle. As we climbed closer and closer to the peak, the cultists only grew stronger, with some of them casting magic and some of them apparently being the Halo kind of Spartans for how goddamn big they were. There were a few close fights, but all of my abilities are finally starting to click, and at the end of the day, they were still felled just as easily as those that came before them. Reaching the Griffin, I did at least find out why people worshipped her. She can talk.
I am as terrible as I am beautiful!
Fancy words, bird lady, but have you considered that you are made of level up, and apparently a whole lot of other stuff? Unfortunately, even this early into the game, PancreasStillNoWork is starting to hit the point where most of the items he finds are designated for a completely different build, but that's fine. What some may see as a wasted opportunity is what I see as my profit margins rising ever higher. All that's left is to burn the Griffin's egg so her children can take revenge. And speaking of revenge, oh would you look at that. Turns out that lady from the intro isn't just some random generic goddess figure. That's Nemesis, the Greek goddess of balance, justice, and vengeance. Apparently our kindly mentor was one of her priestesses, but she intervenes with a magical horsey to save our asses from the attacks that wiped out the entire Spartan army in the intro. Questions abound, and for once, the mentor character answers more than 0 before the inevitable. Even more surprisingly, she tags along with us for a bit and helps us kill these shadow demon things. Dear PancreasStillNoWork was the subject of a prophecy at birth, to which Nemesis apparently took exception to. Deciding infanticide was a better option than just letting things play out, she wanted us dead, but Aristino had a functioning moral compass and spirited us away. Now all those rather rude comments NPCs made up to this point about wondering why she trained us so hard were coming together. matter. The specifics of this prophecy aren't really known to us beyond Nemesis not being a fan of it, but this fancy little boat can apparently take us to the realm of the goddesses of fate. Apparently that's just a quick ride down the interstate from where we're at. And for those of you who said she was going to die when I asked earlier, congratulations, you win. Your reward is this death cutscene. Watch it proudly. We also drown a little bit before washing up on a beach. In a completely unknown realm, we'll have to survey our surroundings, advance carefully, and make sure we can survive long enough to find the fates. Right after I beat this bird to death.
The mortal woke on a strange shore, alone.
Had that figured out already, ma'am, but thanks for the company, I guess. At least for our troubles, we find this shrine, where visions of various different animals beckon us to experience the world within. The lion, the dolphin, or the owl. To quote the philosophers of the Neolithic era, I unga, therefore I bunga. Adding to the voices in our head is a pleasant-sounding older gentleman, who turns out to be the ghost horse our mentor rescued us with. Supposedly some divine horse or something. I'm gonna be honest with you, viewer, in spite of how I open these videos, all 2 of them as of this one, I have not used my history degree in several years. I've also not read Percy Jackson in several years. This horse is not Pegasus, so for all I know, he could be Zeus's own personal steed. Regardless, he's going to be sticking around me for a bit as I murder crabs and lizard people to find better gear. I also find another merchant and her 2 guards having the realest conversation I've ever heard.
How do we get roped into protecting this merchant again?
Drachmae, remember?
Money? Who cares about money?
I don't care about money. Just what it can buy.
If there's ever been a better reason to wake up and slave away every day at a job you hate, I've yet to hear it. Shortly after that gem of an exchange, we find ourselves a proper task. Our horse Arian says that according to legend, only a god can open the Temple of the Moirai where we need to head. He also wishes our mentor was still with us, for she always had a plan. First off, we're in the land of Greek myth and legend, buddy. Give it 10 minutes tops and we'll find a god somewhere. And second off, I'm perfectly capable as well. I can hit things with a stick with the best of them. Have some faith, my equine companion. Wandering through a cave and wondering when one of these dungeon crawler games will allow the player to open a pest control business, we come out on the other side to the ruins of what was once probably a nice place to live. Nowadays, the creatures that I can't decide if they're more lizard or fish have set up shop, but after destroying the bridge on the advice of this man who was getting his ass beat by them, our horse tells us that the local god of the area, Glaukos, is apparently an old friend of his. However, I'm incredibly wary of this. Glaukos, as Arian knew him, would supposedly never allow this scenic dam to be breached, so he may have changed, been imprisoned, or even corrupted. More importantly, however, Glaukos sounds like glucose, and I am a diabetic. However, it's the only lead we've got for now, unless that fella in the jar can convince Hermes to lend a hand, so we press onward. Sure enough, we find some people talking smack about Glaukos, and given that they aren't instantly smote down, he must really be a goober to allow that kind of thing. Since the gods are incompetent, however, I guess I'll just have to do things myself. Rescuing a woman from some Ichthyans, she thanks us by having her dialogue bug out and end abruptly multiple times, which I chalk up to adrenaline and shock at her near demise. Some more wild animal massacring later when we find the outskirts of the village of Pyrgos. On the bright side, this means that our original destination can't be far. On the even brighter side, the outskirts are mostly Ichthyan by volume, meaning another batch of level ups is on its way. Smashing our way through them, we find a cave holding some prisoners the fishmen have taken. One of them seems to think they're being held for ransom, since after all, they're very respectable members of Pyrgos that would probably fetch a nice price. I do her a kindness and don't inform her about the sacrificial slab I found, and she gets to reunite with her brother none the wiser of her near fate. Thankfully, the main body of the village beyond is still perfectly fine. Granted, cut off from the world, worrying about their god going mad or worse, and having to deal with refugees and their farmlands being destroyed, but they still breathe and there are no Ichthyans around, which in these kinds of situations is always a plus. After actually buying items for the first time in the game instead of just looting various corpses, we find Tecton, a man so shit at his job he's just called inexperienced leader. He asks 2 things of us: find his aunt, who in better times is the actual leader, and help deal with all the Ichthyans. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you, Tecton, I couldn't care any less about your aunt. The Ichthyans, though? You've just found the finest fishman hunter in all of Hellas, my friend. All I have to do is prove myself to this Spartan, whose initial reception of me is proof that this game takes place before Alexander the Great's dad mushroom-stamped the entire city-state and Rome double-tapped what was left. After killing one single Ichthian, he changes his mind and tells us to go kill the Ichthyans Ichthian commanders and go rescue the temple from the siege it's under. He also gave us some hints as to our mentor's backstory, but I have to confess, I still don't care. I will be shedding the blood of not just the Ichtha men, but the Ichtha women and Ichtha children too. Please just get out of my way and let me do my job. To make a rather long story short, we entered the swamplands and proceeded to do what in more modern times would probably get us sent to The Hague. Countless swarms of Ichthians attacked us, and every single one was lit on fire, stomped to death, had their brains bashed in, or some combination of the three. Tripping over side quest objective after side quest objective was purely coincidental. With Kratos gone to hang out with the Norse, someone had to fill his spot as a mythocidal maniac, and Prostagma was only too happy to oblige. Calming down the Bat People was an unfortunate side quest completed because I yearn for their blood, but I suppose some happy endings are guaranteed no matter how much you want to kill. A Shrine of Hermes was restored, an Ichthian smoke signal reduced to cinders and ashes, and I would like to reiterate that if games like this genuinely let you set up an exterminator business, you would crash the economy by holding about half the world's GDP. We also found a bit of moly root. Why is this important? Because this random naiad turned me into a goat and accused me of wanting to steal her stuff. Well, it wasn't on the agenda before, but now it certainly is. Apparently she decided that because one mortal stole from her, all who approach are to be turned into goats. You may say, that's pretty blatant racism. I would agree. However, not only did the ancient Greeks coin the term barbarian to mean anyone not Greek, so it's very on brand to the time period, but I have spent the last 2 hours being the Pelennal Whitestrake of Ichthians. Not willing to call her out in case Nemesis catches wind of my blatant hypocrisy, I instead agree to get her Lily back so she would calm down. This started what I will be calling the Bandit mini-arc. At some point in time, a mercenary company called the Bronze Lion settled in the nearby region. Usually, mercenaries offer martial services in exchange for money or goods. These mercenaries kidnap you, force you to serve, and then loot your town while the Ichthians burn it down. Not in concert with each other, it's just a nice little symbiotic relationship they've got going. In other words, they'd be just my type of faction to join if that was allowed. I had been fighting them sporadically throughout the region, and with the chance to potentially join up with them, I rushed to their commanding officer. Unfortunately, during the recruitment process of going to talk to the guy, there was an old man trying to convince him to let his son leave his press ganger's war party. The option to tell the old man to piss off so I could talk to him never appeared, and tragically I had to settle on beating the leader's skull in before emptying the camp of all life forms. This was the hardest fight in the game up to this point. Their leader hit like a bus, but no one fights in melee quite like Prostagma, and with me using my dodge ability for something other than moving slightly faster across the map, he was dealt with easily enough. Then his underlings reenacted the charge of the Rohirrim on me as punishment. Normally, this just means they're going to die closer to me, but the bandits were the only enemies to realize en masse that getting close to me is a death sentence, and repeatedly shot me with bows and arrows. It took every ability I had actually being utilized tactically to survive their onslaught, but I was at least rewarded with a hefty amount of experience and currency for my troubles. And the Naiad's Lily, though I was sincerely hoping it wouldn't show up so I could cave her skull in too. Since this area is utterly massive, however, I accidentally ended up heading to the main quest line next, descending into a temple being ransacked by Ichthians and finding the head priestess of Glaukos going through a rather difficult situation. The magic holding her was so potent that it caused my game to crash to desktop, but this was, if anything, a fortuitous occurrence. It gave me an excuse to go give the Naiad her Lily, but also respawn all the enemies in the area. Some may say this is inconvenient. I say it gives me twice the opportunities for leveling. Touching the big red rock worked well enough the last few times, but this time the skeleton warriors I fought were a bit much to handle. Though we made it through the first few waves, one of them finally granted us the first death of the run. Unfortunate. Inconvenient. Infuriating. The second run was another close call, but our victory was assured. Knowing the attack patterns and spawns helped a lot, as did the skeletons in the first wave that sat there shooting into the air while I hid behind a rock waiting for my health to regenerate. Here in ancient Greece, we take the wins we can get. With all the skeletons dead and the priestess freed, I can continue my long and storied history of groping rocks that are probably best left alone. Our horse friend is initially deeply concerned, but upon realizing that we are simply him, he's elated. A quick conversation with the priestess and that old guy from the bridge who showed back up reveals that Glaukos appears to be well and truly gone, and some people have taken to looking for Pan to save them instead. Pan is a bit of a wild god in general, but in Percy Jackson he was a real one who let Grover be a part of the story again for a bit, so I can't help but feel positive towards the guy. Prostagma isn't one to leave a job unfinished, however, so with that in mind, hello Ichthian Commander. Hello, Ichthian Commander. The nerve of these fishmen for wanting to live. Before moving on, we also find this thing. given to the shrine's bloodlust. Well, if that isn't the most pleasant invitation I've got in all game. It even provides us with a way to sate it. How thoughtful. And for dessert, these remaining bronze lions who didn't get the memo after the last 100 I killed. On the way to Pan, we find another town, and while my chief vice of murder isn't to be sated, my secondary pleasure in life is about to be gambling. This man offers us a chance to get some mystery weapons and armor, and after taking a chance on a new torso piece and club, I have to say I think I came away pretty successful. Thank you, gambling man. I may return to do business later on one day. I may now look 3 times as homeless, but I'm also at least 3 times as deadly. Reaching Pan's Grove of course involves speaking a nonsense entry phrase, and even more expectedly, everyone in here is either completely insane or going through one hell of an ayahuasca trip. And of course Pan can't just tell us what we need to do. We need to go light a fire and figure it out. At least that old man is once again back, and also in utter dismay at the nonsense occurring around us. Misery loves company, after all. His warnings, though, while appreciated, are unnecessary. I don't need to trust in my hearing or vision, just my big stick. Sure enough, the moment I walk in the cave, Aristino is back and Nemesis' servants have returned.
Why are you attacking the air?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Arian. It's because the air has hands. Aristino then wanders off to a circle of people doing something, worshipping this purple evil fire, I guess, and going completely mental while doing so. Luckily for them, I have a big hammer and a complete disregard for any property damage I may cause. Pan has a meltdown and thinks he can stop me from leaving, but if the goddess of revenge wasn't enough to kill me, I don't think this glorified goat will be either. He does give us some pretty great dialogue courtesy of the developers knowing exactly the kind of person who plays these games, though.
Now you're stealing from me! I hate you!
Taking a brief moment to kill all his wolves and guards because he pissed me off, we finally reach the heights of this grove and see our opponent, a proper god of legend. He may not be the most prominent one, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be any less satisfied taking his head. The fight wasn't the most difficult one ever, though. Pan apparently has been getting fat and lazy off all the soup his supplicants have been feeding him, and while he hits like a truck, he's as slow as syrup. A few quick dodges and plenty of bashes to the head later, and ta-da, there we go. Don't mind if I do take your horn as a trophy. How I cut it off with a blunt weapon I don't know, but I'll just chalk it up to god stuff. Pan goes from furious to happy, we gave him a good spot of fun, and our old man fella is revealed to be none other than Glaukos himself. What a surprise. And I wasn't actually expecting that. I figured he was just some crotchety old guy. But Glaukos says he can open the door to the Moirais, so I guess I can't be too dismissive of him now. Is that a transactional way to view a deity? Yeah, and the last one who took offense to that got his ass kicked, so who cares? We take a brief moment to go through another ritual fight thing, for I will ever roleplay the Doomslayer in these games, and then we're off. Fighting our way to Glaukos, because of course we have to fight our way there, can't ever just be invited in for a nice walk up, he reveals he's been hiding from Nemesis due to her establishing a presence in the north. Having no idea where I'm at, that could mean anything from northern Greece to the fucking Arctic Circle. But at least he's had a bit of a change of heart and has revealed himself in his full godly splendor, and opens the door to the Moirai Temple so we can discuss matters of fate with those who control it directly. Assuming they aren't dead, which given the intro of this game I wouldn't be too shocked. Good news, they aren't dead. Bad news, this temple is a sprawling underground cathedral that just goes on and on and on, filled with all sorts of nasties trying to halt our progress. Worse news, the intro didn't lie to me and Nemesis' servants are already here, including her right hand if this punished Spartan is anything to go by. But no Metal Gear is going to stop the inevitable march of Prostagma, aside from this brief moment where they very much stopped me. Even after pushing past them, the journey ahead wasn't easy. Nemesis blocked the most direct path through to our goal, and her servants littered the alternate way the fates guided us towards. Even then it was time for me to once again become an exterminator, because with the boundless wisdom of the goddess of justice, Nemesis decided that fish people would make the best guards possible. Now I can't criticize her too much for this because they hurt me so bad at one point their damage outpaced my healing potion and I died, but still, you'd think as a goddess she could at least afford to spare a few more ghosts or something classy. At least the path ahead was obvious. It's difficult to scream boss fight any harder than a looming doorway covered in evil red crystals. Sure enough, Nemi's lieutenant appeared again, moderately surprised we made it through up to this point. After proudly telling him I was Aristino's student because subtlety is for people without 7-foot-long clubs, he had a bit of a war inside his own mind. It seemed whatever was left of his original self was trying to tell us something, but Nemesis's ick reasserted itself and he fled to go tell his master we were still alive. Feeling rather blue-balled, I took out my frustrations on his minions. Right beyond that, behold, the biggest of big rocks we've yet to find. You already know we're touching that shit, and after repeated waves of enemies, we get to fondle it another time for more power. Of some kind, not really sure how it's helping me to be honest, but my horse friend seems suitably impressed, so I'm sure it did something mystical. Supposedly it's Titan blood, but everyone could be gaslighting me about that, and I've just been injecting crack directly into my soul. This whole time I've neglected to mention that living skeletons, presumably of the Moirai's own followers, had been hounding us the entire time in addition to Nemesis's minions. Even Orion was wondering how much more we'd have to prove ourselves, and I have to agree with him. At a certain point, surely you have bigger concerns than one dude who just wants to have a conversation, such as the goddess currently ransacking your house to destroy the concept of fate. But after one final big skeleton, the best kind, we've done it. We can speak to the Moirai as our master bade us to do at the start. Their own personal spot in the temple was admittedly quite impressive, with all the ornate finery you'd expect of true beings of legend. There was no time to stop though, and I proceeded post-haste, with the exception of staring at some of those strands idly wondering how many people would die if I just took a little swing at them. Meeting the fates brought forth revelations, as such a thing naturally entails. Nemesis, for one reason or another, is throwing a divine temper tantrum and just outright trying to destroy the world. Her method? Finding enough of that Titan Ichor to resurrect Kronos himself. Since he's the Titan of Time, he can apparently rewind it to completely undo the threads of the fates and kill the gods before they ever ruled. Unfortunate that Arcantos and Castor beating his ass wasn't enough the first time around, but we'll just have to finish what they started. With the idea now put in my head that Mythologico Dio Brando might run amok if we don't start, I'd have to say I'm invested in putting Nemesis in the ground. For our part, we've got a fancy crescent moon birthmark that marks us as destined to fight and defeat Nemesis, making the JoJo references only stronger. With a fancy vial, we've been instructed to steal her divinity and her servants, as well as her very power itself. Quite the task, but I'm certainly up for it. For now, though, our tale comes to an end. Prostagma has reached the ending of the Alpha, and with it his story must pause for now. Until such a day we can resume, I will be sitting here in withdrawal at the fact that Titan Quest II is only an early alpha, and I have to wait an undetermined amount of time to get my fix. Aside from that, though, this has been Titan Quest II. If you'd like to support the channel, consider subscribing. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. Do you think Ichthyans taste more like fish, people, or chicken? Because if I could cook one of these things and eat them, I absolutely would. You only get to sacrificially murder so many people before you start deserving it yourself, after all. I'd personally hope they taste like some nice salmon, but I'd be willing to settle on really any kind of fish to make them into sushi with.